source, no taxing ability for our school boards. In other states, the school boards can tax and they can raise their own money. You see what's going on in Virginia Beach now, where it's our money, your money, city council take it, pull it out, same thing in Suffolk. I'm concerned about that type thing. It's easier for a councilman.
You finish your sentence.
For a city councilman, that pushes a lot of that responsibility off of us. Now we've got a capable school board, they work, and they come back to us and we work together, and we're not fighting like you're seeing in other municipalities. But I am open-minded about it, but I think we ought to try to get that taxing ability to go hand in hand.
Okay. Thanks, Barclay. Jesse?
I'm confident in saying that I have more classroom hours as a teacher than the rest of the table combined. I've been endorsed by the Norfolk Federation of Teachers. I have a master's in education. I've written a book on teaching. I've written a book advice for new teachers. I've taught here at ODU, and I spent 10 months in Cape Town, South Africa, volunteering full-time at a home for young men. So if we want someone who knows how to make the schools better, it's going to be me, if that's one of the issues that you care about. To take it away from the schools for a second to economic development, there is no bigger economic development tool than our schools. So this goes way beyond just educating our future. This is our economic future. They did a study in Virginia Beach. For every $1 they put in the schools, they got $1.50 back. So it just makes smart economic sense. Really quick, the city council can do very little with the schools. The rule is that's a school board issue. They actually do it. Handle the schools, we just say the money. Oh Lord, this is a soundbite kind of environment, isn't it? Not real answers. We have to fully fund the schools. Don't believe anyone who says they're fully funded when we're cutting hundreds of jobs. And this is bigger than the city. This is about God right now. If we're failing our children, I don't care what religion you are, I don't care if you're agnostic or atheist, this is the most important thing. If we're failing our children, we need to stop what we're doing and fix this problem.
Thank you. Marcus?
Again, I congratulate Jesse on the Teachers Federation endorsement. I know at a recent forum, we all realized that the Teachers Federation didn't talk to anybody else. So I do want to shed some light on that. However, when it comes to an elected school board, I'm the only candidate who has been endorsed by elected school board members who have taught in Norfolk. And I've been a teacher's assistant in Norfolk, and I've been a tutor, and I've been representing any vote that I cast on behalf of children will not be my first vote. When it comes to money for schools, I would like to implement a No Votes for Buddies program where you eliminate the right of a councilman to vote for any business contributor. I'm not just talking about one in particular, but if you look at all the list of contributors to city council in general, that's where you find a consistent revenue stream. Because if you can cut that out, you'll find a lot of money. Whether you find $76 million for Waterside, almost $1 million for YMCA, regardless, go to vpap.org and look at all the councilmen's funds, all of them. And that's where you'll find a consistent revenue stream.
Thank you. In this part of, in our part of town, historic preservation has long been an interest, and there is has always been a little tension between development and historic preservation. So this questioner would like to know where you stand on that. What do you know about, what do you think about expanding or either the number or the size of historic districts within our city? And what about an architectural review board that actually has some teeth? So Marcus, we'll start with you and go the other way around.
I think that architectural review board would be great. And this is one of the many issues where I think you need a working councilman who will work beside the civic leagues and work with them. And I'm not talking about on an invited basis to be a guest speaker, but you need someone who's going to sit down and have working sessions with these civic leagues, with the Ghent Business Association to preserve the culture of Ghent, with the Ghent Neighborhood League to preserve the culture of the neighborhoods in Ghent. That's what you need. You need somebody who's going to get out of the way, but yes, still work with you. This is not something that you need City Council to create solutions from City Hall for. You can't do that. You cannot make decisions behind these closed doors in City Hall and hope that they fare well in the community. The only way to do that is to have a working councilman who will work as hard for you. As the way you do that is you look at our backgrounds. Look at our backgrounds before the campaign. Look at what we were doing. Look at where we were. Look at how often we came to see you. Look at what we live, and that is how you know if we're going to be worried about preserving the history in your community or not, or if we're going to be worried about the businesses in your community or not. That's how you figure that out.
Jesse?
I don't want to live in a 7-Eleven city. I don't want to live in a Chick-fil-A city. Has anyone else read the book Lost Norfolk? here, it's picture after picture of these beautiful historic buildings that have been torn down. And it is sad, the beautiful city that we tore down and didn't necessarily even put anything there. You know, you look at the Weston space, you're tearing down historic buildings. And thank God for Tom White, and now we have the plot. But before then, you tore down beautiful historic buildings for nothing. It's really sad that we have, and we actually have a historic committee. I forget what it's called. They asked me to be on it. But it doesn't have teeth, you're right. I'm on the Public Art Commission. We have gone through our entire public art process, which takes months, and gotten a final design on a work, and it floated up to the mayor, and he shot it down. And this happens across the divisions. Our capital improvement projects don't go through the planning division. He sends them straight to facilities to be made. Right now, the commissions and the boards and the professionals we have as citizens working to make these choices aren't respected. We have a top-down city right now, and we have got to shake it up if we want it to move forward.
Barkley.
Okay, I think having a tighter architectural standard and board is very important. I think we need to do whatever we can, or whatever we have to do to maintain the integrity of our historic buildings. We're looking at a couple schools now, Larchmont and Ocean View Elementary. I think we need to look really hard at renovating rather than tearing them down and starting over. I was very instrumental in ensuring that the Blair Middle School was renovated rather than torn down and started over. It is our city. Unfortunately, in the past, some of our leaders have made bad decisions, and we can't undo that. But we do have special facilities, special buildings, special parts of our city, and we need to do whatever it takes to preserve them.
John?
I just say listen to the people, listen to communities. That's simple. Listen to them if they know the best for the communities. I mean, if you listen to Ghent community, you'll know which buildings you need to be preserved. And as long as council listens to the people, to the community, we should have no problems.
Along that same line, talking about historic preservation, we also have some buildings that are abandoned and really do not add to neighborhood. And we had a specific question tied around the CHKD warehouse that's on the corner of Front and Raider Streets, and it prompts the question, what is the city's responsibility for dealing with long-term blighted properties? What is the responsibility, and what can you as council members do about that particular problem? And Jesse, I think it's your turn, isn't it?
What you get in me that you find more of than anybody else at this table right now is innovation. You get low-cost, high-impact solutions. For years and years, you had the Zeds building on Granby Street. Depressing. When you have a blighted building, it's depressing. We spent about $150 in volunteer hours. Now, anybody who passes that thing's an inspiration. People go, they take their kids for pictures there. After prom, you get your pictures taken there. $150. We went from something depressing to an inspiration. Another example, Art Everywhere, which is a project I initiated. We had these empty storefronts on Granby Street, which is kind of depressing. It makes us look like a city in decline. And I saw that as an opportunity. The last 2 summers, we have filled those windows with art. And it has made downtown so much more delightful. I see opportunities where other people see a problem. And that's the kind of mindset that I will bring to City Council.
Barkley?
Okay, dealing specifically with the building you're talking about over in Fort Norfolk area, we've looked at that. I've been in the building. It is an eyesore. The city, all the city can do is require them to meet all the code and safety regulations. The state of Virginia has very strict rules about how we can deal with derelict structures. I've been with Bobby Wright. I've begged him to come paint it, to retrofit it, to work on it, do anything he can. We've done everything in our power. We need to get, and we're lobbying now with the state delegates to have the state give us the power to go after derelict structures. You could have a house next door to yours in a nice neighborhood, boarded up, painted pink, if it's boarded up properly, if all the plywood's tacked in the windows. Unfortunately, the state will not let us move on it. It could be that way forever. There's no time frame, and we've been working. We've gotten some movement on it, but unless it's a call for public safety or a health hazard or code violation, they've tied our hands. And that's not a good answer, but that's what the state law says.
Thanks. John?
I believe in fundamental changes, and in order to fix all those problems, again, this city, we need to fix our schools. We need to have best schools in the state. We need to make sure that we are the best friendly city for the businesses. And then you're not going to have most of those problems because they will be resolved, because you're going to have people want to come and live in Norfolk. You're going to have businesses rushing to get buildings and make them beautiful so that attract more business. So it's a fundamental, to me, it's a fundamental issue rather than trying to throw, a little bit of money there, a little bit of money here, trying to patch up things. I'd say let's fundamentally make our city that city on the hill, the best city. So.
Marcus?
I definitely agree with the councilman's point, and I think it does come down to getting our state legislators to do certain things. You need someone who's going to go to them, as Councilman Wynn has, but I think you need somebody who's going to put a little bit more fire on that. I worked with Democrats, I've worked with Republicans, and if there's one thing I know, is that I know that it's election season, because right after this you have your congressmen and then you have some of your state legislators up for re-election. If not this year, then next year. But you need somebody who's going to say, well, you know what, remember all those civic leagues that you're about to go to? I'll meet you there. Let's talk about that derelict structure that you won't change the law about. So you need somebody who's going to literally be a nuisance for these, because that's really, in that level, that's really all you can do. But you need somebody who's going to fight for things like that, because if it's a state law, then again, we have, Super Ward 6 has the clout, really, to throw some weight around and get those state laws changed. And if you need a councilman to hold them accountable, because they come to the council representatives for their endorsements and their support, and then once you go door to door with them, it's the exact same thing. Hold their feet to the fire, meet them at those civic leagues, and ask the questions the same way anybody else would.
Thank you. Parking is a concern in certainly in all the areas that are represented here by the groups putting on this forum. Specifically, there's a specific question, but there's a more general question. That is, have you got any solutions for the parking issues that we have? And specifically, why do we ticket people on the weekend downtown when there's nobody there? I've seen it. I've seen it. So why are we doing that, and why don't we stop? So we'll start off with you, Barclay.
Okay, we have been pushing, and I see Councilman Whibley's here to get that lifted, and we're working on having free parking on the weekends on the streets. It doesn't make any sense, and it's something we're trying to deal with. Parking is a tough issue, especially in dense areas like Freemason downtown. We're working to adjust or are adjusting our parking regulations to be more compatible to the areas that they're in. For instance, the same regulations in Ward's Corner may not apply in downtown and may not apply in again, the secret is the only way to totally solve it, because we're all 95% developed and land is at a premium, is to get people out of their cars, get them on the light rail, get them on the buses, get them on their bicycles, get them walking, and try it so that we're not congested. We help the environment and we solve the problem. But it's a tough problem. We just bought a piece of property behind No Frill Grill on Spotswood and put in parking there. We worked it with across from Blair.
Okay, thanks. John?
A lot of things in our city don't make sense, be that taking people on the weekend, or be that not letting anybody even to have a business, even if that involves just a computer from your home. No, you can't have that. That's different coding. You cannot use your computer to do anything from your home. You have to get that permission. I mean, so many things don't make sense. You know why? Because your city council, your elected officials are worried about those developers. All they do all day, I'm sorry, Councilman Wynn, they just trying to make sure that they make those developers happy. And money comes in, money goes. As soon as we get them out of that business and put them on what they're supposed to be working on, our schools, changing our tax code regulations, make us the best city on the hill, then you're going to have those issues. There's common sense.
Marcus?
I'm not sure if I'm understanding why it's taking so long to fix this issue, as long as I've been hearing it talked about. I left Hampton Roads when I was 9 years old. My dad used to be in the Air Force, and I went overseas to Saudi Arabia. I came back here in 2000. I still haven't seen it fixed since then. So I'm confused about that. But that's something, again, because it is a small business issue when you look at the parking in downtown Norfolk. Now, when it comes to the weekend, that's one of those things that just doesn't make any sense. And I'm not sure why, after someone has already been elected at least once, why it's not something that can be fixed. But I think that you need somebody who's going to literally work on an issue like that. I would like to see some actual free parking. I'm not seeing where all the maybe I'm just too unaware, but I'm not seeing where all the money goes when you park in a garage for 2 hours and you pay $6 to get out. I'm not seeing where the money's going exactly, and we don't have any money for all these other issues. We have money in the parking garage, and it's dirty, it's not clean. I would think they'd be made out of pure gold the way that you pay for the parking, but maybe that's just my own opinion. But you need somebody who's going to sit down and talk with the residents and the civic leagues and the groups and get something done.
Jesse.
If anyone wants to talk for 4 to 8 hours about any of these issues after the event, let me know, because I can sure do it. My business has been located downtown, and the major reason we consider leaving is because of parking. It's really hard for our clients to come see us. So we've got to fix it. If we want downtown to be small business friendly, we've got to fix the parking issue. And frankly, one of the reasons that we have this issue as we do, none of our leadership lives downtown. And I don't even know that they go downtown as often as they could. Most of our leadership is centered in West Ghent and Larchmont for this side of the city. And I think it really shows. The head of the DNC, the Downtown Norfolk Council, doesn't even live in Norfolk, no less downtown. And how can you be surprised when we have all these problems downtown when we don't have leadership there? I'm a downtown guy. You're going to see downtown blossom over the next 4 years if I'm elected, not with $100 million solutions, but $20,000 solutions, $50,000 solutions. We don't have a parking commissioner, that's the first issue. There's bond issues with the parking garages, so it is more complicated and we have to understand those issues. And I think we need to revamp the bus system and make downtown bike friendly. You know, fix the car problem too much, the parking problem too much.
Thanks, Jesse. Okay, let's talk for a minute about regionalism. That's certainly, that's another one of those topics that has been talked about ever since I can remember. And the quote that I think brings up this question is that Councilman Wynn was quoted in Veer magazine. It was a good quote, that he'd give up his seat on city council if our region cities could come together in a manner similar to like New York City and its boroughs. So I'm curious, what is your take on regionalism? What do you think that we as the cities in this region can do to work more closely together to avoid duplication and benefit from the power of working together? And John, we'll start with you on that one.
You know, I support some, you know, regionalism. That's not my friendly word there, huh? For many things, but not like to become one city, because every city has a history. Norfolk has a lot of history. I read about it. And I think Norfolk, and I strongly believe that Norfolk people are proud of the city. Why would you want to become a New York City? We already have a New York City. We already have Washington, D.C. But this is Norfolk, and that's Virginia Beach. I'd say everybody keeps their own name. But yeah, there's some projects that we can work together. Tide could be one of them.
Yeah, Marcus.
This kind of goes back to my opening comment. I think Super Ward 6 could really lead the whole issue of regionalism. When you have half of a city with as much as we have, the naval base, the port, the 6 business commissions, the region's largest university, absolutely, regionalism is a key issue, and you need somebody who's going to be out there fighting for that. Now, the first thing that I would do would, of course, be one, to talk to the mayors and the city council members in other cities to really see what the issue is, because I think a lot of it purely is immature territorial issues, really and truly. You need somebody who can actually just go right out there and make those kind of things happen. But again, going back to my opening comment, when you have what we have and the businesses alone, we have people from all over the region, just because of what we have here, rushing into Super Ward 6 to punch a clock at 9 a.m. We drive the region. There's no other way to look past that. So what you need is for somebody who's going to sit down and have these conversations and hold people's feet to the fire and make things happen. But we need to be the ones driving the regionalism because we are the most regional.
Jesse.
I'm going to look at this from 2 ways, marketing and quality of life. We would be smart to call this region Norfolk, Virginia Beach over Hampton Roads, just from a branding perspective. People around the country know those 2 brands and they trust them, but nobody's heard of Hampton Roads. So I would even be in favor of at least Norfolk and Virginia Beach combining their tourism boards. because then you really have a sell. You've got the city, you've got this artsy, funky community in Ghent, you've got the naval base, and you've got the beach. That's a region I want to visit. That's a region I want to move to and call home. And then quality of life. I think there's a lot of ways we can work better as a region for quality of life, where you're cutting down on costs for the individual municipalities, but you're actually improving customer service. It's just smart business. And the best example I can think of, other than HRT, is the Governor's School. You give these kids an opportunity to become artists. You know, and how many professionals have you had from the Governor's School? We need to look at that as a model, starting with education, but all across the board, of how can we give our kids and our adults a better quality of life here by sharing.
Barclay.
Okay, I believe regionalism, regional cooperation is the future. I serve on a committee called the Shared Services Committee, which has met for the last 6 months. We are going to report out. We met yesterday. We're going to report out. The city manager and myself, Jim Spohr, the city manager of Virginia Beach, and Glenn Davis, one of their council people, and the city manager from Chesapeake, and Rick West, one of their council people, along with representatives from senior managers from Norfolk Southern, the Norfolk Newport News Ship, Dollar Tree, and AmeriGroup. We've met looking at ways that we can work together as a city, not to duplicate services, and also to provide a better quality of life for our citizens. We're going to be reporting out soon. We're going for the low-hanging fruit, over $10 to $11 million worth of savings that we are all agreed on to take back to our councils to help make this a more productive, efficient area. And that's the first step, I think, in working out from that to moving towards all of us working together. And I think that is our future.
Thank you. Well, this is an interesting question about the law of unintended consequences. We had a specific question that was submitted about Centerra being a smoke-free campus, and unfortunately there are residents around there in Ghent who find that employees of the hospital and the medical school are, quote, they create a safety hazard from jaywalking and a pollution problem from their smoke and cigarette butts. Apparently some are even smoking in the playground that's right across Colley Avenue from the hospital, interestingly enough. Yeah, I know hospital employees smoking. Anyway, that's so, and of course, obviously, you can even expand that in, because I know when I walk out of a restaurant, there's people often smoking right in front of the door. So the question is, do you have a solution to that? Is there anything that can be done about that situation, the specific one with Centerra, and just in general about that? Marcus, you get to go first on that one.
Well, that is a little bit of a different issue, if I'm understanding it correctly, because it is on Centerra's grounds.
Well, Centerra is smoke-free, but apparently, so therefore their employees walk across the street and into the neighborhood who smoke. And I can imagine that if you live there, that's probably an issue. It is
well,
to someone.
That's something where I think you'd have to develop a solution by working with the Civic League. But in addition to that, I would like to see if we could work out some kind of fines or some type of penalty for that. Because if you're not supposed to be smoking, if you're actually going across the street for that, obviously sounds like a very, sometimes it's just hard to legislate common sense. And common sense isn't always so common, but that's what it sounds like it is. It sounds like more of a common sense issue, and I wish you could legislate that. But that's something I think that you just have to have some serious conversations about and try to work up some type of penalty or some type of small fine to discourage people from doing that.
John?
To be honest with you, I don't know the details of that situation, so I wouldn't comment on something I don't know.
Okay. Barclay, you got any thoughts?
Okay, yeah, I'm familiar with at least 3 companies that do that, Centerra, and I'm all against smoking. It's a horrible habit. I don't know, no offense to anybody that smokes, but I don't understand it. MHI has that same policy. USAA has that policy, and Centerra has that policy. And what happens is they leave their campus, go across on somebody's corner, and you got cigarette butts and what have you. I think if you're going to have a smoke-free campus, it's your responsibility to provide a remote site on your property where your employees go. It is not fair to send them across the street and stand on the corners in front of somebody else's house. The MHI had it, they were standing on Warrington Street in front of offices, and there's litter. So I think if you're going to do it, I'm all for it. I'm all about not smoking, but I think if you could find a remote place on your campus and say this is where the only place you can smoke, and I understand they're trying to get people to stop, and a lot are, but not all, and it's not fair to the adjacent property owners.
Jesse?
Yeah, I think one of my big skills is bringing people together to the table and trying to figure out what the mutually beneficial solution is. So I think if we took a walk around the grounds with someone from the Civic League and someone from Centerra, we'd figure this out pretty quick. But I don't necessarily think this is a city council kind of issue. But the way that these issues don't happen in the first place is you have better neighbors. You have neighbors who know each other's names. You have more people going to the civic leagues. You have more community gardens. You know the name of everybody on your block. You don't have these problems because you're having them over for potluck dinners. You know, you're going out to dinner with them. You're watching each other's kids. So I really want to live in the city where it feels like one big neighborhood. And once you have that kind of feeling and that level of communication between neighbors, all these kind of issues tend to melt away and you don't go looking to government. I don't think we should look to government for the solutions. First, we need to look to each other. How can we fix this problem? Not how can they fix this problem. How can we fix this problem?
Let's talk about flooding for a minute. Another concern for everybody in this part of town, and the specific question was about the flooding issues in Ghent, but we flood all over, certainly this side of Norfolk. Do you have any ideas, any thoughts? What are their possible ways? Are there city, state, or federal programs? Is there something that we can do about the flooding problems that we have in our neighborhoods? And Jesse, you get to go first on that.
We had one legislative agenda this year that we sent up to Richmond, and that was to get money appropriated for flooding. So we spent a lot more on the lobbying than we got back. But that's going to move forward because that's what we needed to do. We needed to get the state on board. The first thing that needs to happen is the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers needs to come in and do their environmental impact survey. So this is moving forward. But, you know, especially when you have a candidate whose family's been here 100 years, I think we've been flooding that long. And I think we need leadership who's going to see this pressing issue. I don't want Norfolk to be the next New Orleans. I love it here too much. So we really need leaders who are going to push and push and push and make sure that survey happens, and then make sure we start getting some solutions.
Marcus?
I remember a while ago, I saw a documentary on WHRO where actually Councilwoman Whibley was on there, and I don't know if she remembers, but I sent her an email. I think she was absolutely right that the city doesn't have enough money to fix the flooding problem. We do need state and federal money to do that, and again, that's when you go back to a councilman who's going to really hold their feet to the fire on that issue, because it's not something that we can pay for. And I know those conversations have already been held, and if you talk to Scott Ridgel or Bobby Scott, I'm sure that they will be happy to tell you that, or maybe unhappy to tell you, that I am not probably one of the most easygoing people when it comes to fighting for things, because that's what you need to happen right there. But it is a state and federal funding problem, and that's where we're going to have to get the money from, and that's something where you're going to have to really hold their feet to the fire on that.
John?
Yeah, just common sense. Of course, we need to work with the federal and state government, making sure that we get necessary funds and start working that direction to fix that issue.
Okay, Barclay.
Okay, well, we are obviously working with the state. Jesse identified that. I have personally talked to Scott Ridgel and Bobby Scott about the problems. The city has identified 4 key areas that we're working on: Ghent, Mason Creek, Pretty Lake, and Spartan Village over by Norfolk State, which we pretty well solved. We are faced with rising tides, and our city is built on a strong foundation, so it's actually sinking a little bit, so this problem is getting worse. We have appropriated an additional $2.5 million in our budget this year to work on these flooding issues and the studies. We've had employed a company called Fugaro, which has given us a flooding study. We're following their recommendations. We're pursuing the funds as hard as we can with the state and the federal government, and we're making a commitment ourselves, because it's a quality of life issue that we have to work on. We've got to get to the bottom of it. We don't want to be New Orleans. We're trying to convince the state and the federal government to be proactive and help us now rather than react to a catastrophe situation that they did down there.
Okay, thank you. We have a question about the issue of character districts. The City Planning Department has proposed 3 character districts, 3 types of character districts, I guess, that will be used to guide future rezoning decisions in Norfolk. That's downtown, urban, and suburban. Ghent is in the urban district. Downtown is, of course, downtown. And there's a proposal that I have heard, and so I think this person's correct, that would include that little area with Hague Tower and the Hague Medical Center as a downtown district as opposed to an urban district like Ghent. So the question is, first of all, what does this mean? And secondly, what is the impact to our area by changing any of this around? And I don't know enough about it, hopefully you all do, to kind of fill us in on what it means and what are your thoughts about the proposals as far as the character districts are concerned. And Barclay, I'll start with you on that.
Okay. I think it's a great idea. What basically we're saying is the same parking and zoning or whatever regulations that might work in Larimore Lawns or Ward's Corner really wouldn't apply in Ghent or downtown. So the different areas are unique, they're special in their own ways. So we're trying to adapt to these areas and identify their strengths and amend our zoning and parking and whatever regulations to the area, try to custom fit it. The question about the Ghent district where it goes across the Hague and takes in 2 commercial buildings as opposed to staying on this side of the Hague and then being in the downtown district, there's a property rights issue that I'm going to have to look at as to whether the people that bought those properties bought them under a certain zoning regulation, things that they thought they could do. I have to look at how that would negatively impact them, whether that would be in fact a taking or a condemnation or loss of rights. So those 2 buildings are a sensitive issue we need to look at, but we are studying it and we'll make that decision probably soon.
John.
Well, I can't believe it because we have so much coding already and so many, it's so complicated already, and they want to add to that. I'd say get rid of all those things already that we have in place and start with something so simple that everyone can look at it in a few pages and say, this is what we got to do business in the city. It's already complicated, and every day they come up with something new. And it's even hard to catch up with those ideas. I mean, but we're talking about heading towards bankruptcy right now. Our revenues went down from $900 million to $600 million in 10 years. We're talking about our schools are not doing well overall, although we got great teachers and some good schools. I'm saying overall, the average. We're talking about businesses are fleeing the city. And what are we talking about? I mean, wrong priorities. Let's fix those issues. Let's make it so simple that we will be the simplest city in the world.
Marcus.
Well, I see the concept in the character districts, and I think that it's a step in the right direction when you can look and see, okay, well, maybe what works for this neighborhood may work for another neighborhood. It's not always the case, but I at least see the concept behind it. In regards to the Hague, no, I think that Brambleton needs to be the endpoint right there. I think that that's where you need to separate those 2. I don't think that the Hague should be part of the Ghent district. I don't think that that they should, be able to switch over.
To switch from Ghent to downtown.
Correct, thank you. I think that's not what it is. This is a totally different side. If you look at how downtown is and you look at how Ghent is, it's 2 totally different things. So no, I don't think that they should be able to switch over like that.
Jessica?
Yeah, just to touch on what John said, there is a certain utility to specific zoning regulations in different neighborhoods. I think the idea is you see what the neighborhood wants to become, and then you put the zoning and the ordinance in place to help the neighborhood blossom to what it is. And I agree with Marcus, downtown in Norfolk, or downtown in Ghent, are very different places, and they really need to be treated differently. And whenever we start meshing them together, you're risking losing what makes Ghent great, its neighborhoodliness and its history, while also sacrificing what could make downtown great. Downtown should be a more densely built kind of place. And this development you're talking about right here, I live in this neighborhood, and that kind of building doesn't belong in that space. I don't think the Hague Towers belong there either, but we're a little late for that. I think we have too much undeveloped space downtown, too many buildings just sitting there. Bobby Wright was here. Let's talk to Bobby about how we can adaptably reuse some of those buildings that have just been sitting there for years before we start talking about potentially changing the character of a neighborhood for the worse.
Thank you. Let's talk about your vision for both the city and particularly Ward 6. Ward 6 is a pretty diverse and sprawling area. It's really interesting to look at on a map. It's wild. So what do you see as the priorities for the ward that you either do represent or would like to represent, and more specifically, for our part, downtown, Freemason, Ghent, West Ghent, what are the most important priorities that you see and that you will tackle when you're on council? And John, we'll start with you.
Well, I like the simplicity. What I will do, I want to make sure that every area of Norfolk City gets the same attention. And I want to make sure that our, like the coding and everything else, so to make sure that every neighborhood can thrive. My vision is when you start doing that, you're going to do favors for one side of the city over the other one, then one councilman will push for something, the other one for something else, especially for Super Ward 6, you got downtown, let's say, like Ghent versus OV, sometimes. I mean, there's so many different conflicting interests can come from it. And to be honest with you, our district thing is also a little bit odd right now. You look at Super Ward 6 and 7, it doesn't make any sense. Why don't you just cut the city in the middle and have 2 super boards there? Do you know why? Because there's so much interests, the way they came up with it, because sitting council members wanted to make sure, I want to get reelected, I want this part and this part. So we need to get rid of that stuff. Make it simple, businesses will come, city will thrive, fix our schools, life comes back to the city.
Marcus.
Well, my 3 priorities would be Ghent, Ward's Corner, and Ocean View. I would like to actually work with the leadership in Ghent, with the Ghent Business Association and the Ghent Neighborhood League, and see how we can, one, maintain and preserve the character of Ghent. There are a lot of franchises coming in, and when I talked to one of the leadership representatives of the Ghent Business Association, if I'm not mistaken, some of those franchises are not even locally owned. When you have a place like Chipotle going into where San Antonio Sam's was, I'm not buying that we have 6 business coalitions here and nobody could find a local business or a local owner who wanted that space, even if you had to cut it in half. I'm just simply not buying that. When you look at Ward's Corner and what happened down there, when Suburban Asset Management wanted to change and Perry wanted to change into a Harris Teeter, which is fine, that's their right to do that. But where was the plan for those small businesses? There wasn't one. So you need a small business commission for that, and you need somebody who's going to look at the schools better. But in general, my overall vision is to really, really work hard on the small business issues and the education issues.